So what you see here is pre-video, pre-recording warm-up dance, just to set the mood.
Alright folks, welcome back to the shop. So in this video what we're going to do is take this old coffee table that's been in my family for years, and we're going to change this from a coffee table to a farmhouse style side table with a center shelf in here. At least that's the plan. Now you might wonder how in the world you're going to get this apart. Well, one of the reasons why we're doing this is because all the glue is drying up on this thing and it's basically coming apart on its own. So the plan is lift it up, put some farmhouse type stuff in there, paint it up white on the bottom half like farmhouse furniture. Let's get started.
So obviously the first thing we need to do is disassemble this table. Now as I started to take this thing apart, I realized how old it was. It was loaded with flat-headed screws. Also, I think my father had a hand in putting a few screws in because there was some square-headed ones in there, and I know they didn't use square-headed screws when this was made. Of course, we got our inspector watching me there. He's always got a watchful eye. Yeah, those were square-headed along the side there where I'm using the drill. I was kind of happy to see those. And we got the first piece off. And as each continued piece comes off, it gets a little easier to take apart. Hey, we got the base free. Now, it was my intention to save those spindles and possibly reuse those as well. We put the top over there so it's safe. Put the spindles aside. And I found there was a screw through the top of that spindle. I was kind of surprised by that one. And we have an attack of Atlas. Jumping on the camera person's not a good thing to do, Atlas. And if you pay attention here, he's going to jump up and inspect my work here in a little bit. And what I'm doing there he is, Inspector. What I'm doing here is just wrapping the spindles to break the bond with the glue and then pulling them out. And if you watch, he doesn't like me hitting them because he goes ahead and punches me in the face here in just a little second. And it's coming right there. Crazy dog. But anyway, we got these things loose. We cleared off the base. So I was trying real hard right there not to break the laminate. It's paper thin, as old as it was. But we're going to fill those knot holes back in with some dowels, and we'll sand those smooth later.
Just like that, we got a base.
It's all about the base.
Alright.
Now what?
I have no idea. So the plan, like I said, is to create a cross here to support the upper table, and then there'll be a support across the inside of the X braces to support the shelf. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off or not, but I'd like to utilize these spindles by cleaning them up and somehow fastening them together like this to create two spindles. Cut these off, and that way I can support the center shelf with these. If I can get the alignment right, that one's not any good, but I can get the alignment right, then I can support the center shelf with these guys and reuse them. They may not go on here, depending on how I feel about it when I get to that point, but until then we're going to save them. And the handy dandy Sears and Roebuck bandsaw shelf unit. That bandsaw shelf unit has become a shelf unit because of this one right here, my baby.
The RIKON.
Okay, so we'll take some measurements and figure out what we're going to do for height. Now the local lumber yard, if you want to call it that, did not have untreated 4x4s to do these cross braces with, so I'm going to make them out of 2x4s. I'm going to use a half lap joint that I'm going to make with the 2x, and let's get going here.
Just repairing a broken spindle. As it turned out, I didn't get to use these in the end anyway, but they're back together for a future project. Some more shop silliness. Lisa was trying to catch me with a bad hair day on camera. I fooled her. We put the hat on before we take the sweatshirt off. What nonsense?
I'm not 100% sure what you're doing.
I am going to put, actually going to make a life-size template here so that I can figure out the cross pieces directly onto the table.
I see.
Now, just want to make sure that I got enough tape to work with. So middle of that to the middle of that. 36. Middle of that. Middle of that will be 36.
How many people write on their table?
All of the smart ones do. That's why we're doing this.
Now you'll know that your leg, your crosses will go from that point to that point, and you can use the tape to draw your angles on your pieces of 2x4.
Was that a tips and trick?
Yeah, and it also tells me, this is the dummy's way of doing things, so that I know when I'm starting with an 8-foot 2x4, I can cut them in the middle and have plenty to work with the angles. This will stay on here throughout the process.
Nice.
Okay, so in my mind that was a 45 going across there. That's not correct. A 45 is not the angle. So the way I found the angle was by going up the tape again. The points that I want the 2x4 to land on are there and this way, there and that way. Line up your 2x4 on the corners, thusly moving it ever so slightly to where it lines up. Taking a T-bevel, setting it against the tape on the bottom, sliding it over and adjusting the angle until you achieve that. So you would take it like this, keeping it in line with your tape, and in line with that. Transfer that to here. Adjust your saw until it is in line and you have your angle.
So I went ahead and I added those two boards on each end of the tape. It just made it easier to push things and hold things in place while I was cutting the cross break angles. And as you can see here, the joints and the seams are right on the money. To save time and be more efficient, I used the short angle on the miter saw, and then to make the long angles I set up the miter fence on the table saw, so I didn't have to keep switching the angles back and forth on the miter saw itself. I didn't like the sharp points on the end of the feet, so I brought them over to the RIKON and we whacked them off. So my wife is a trooper. She sanded on this thing for hours, and it looks like she's taken a little nap. But I realize she's not really asleep. But at the risk of getting in trouble, let's see if I can wake her up.
Hey!
So I thought I'd get a little fancy here. I used the pocket screws to put in the cross piece. Then I screwed the 4 screws into the stretcher going through. And here I'm going to put a little cap on that to hide all of those metal mechanical fasteners. Want to see that again? Here you go. This is how you hide metal fasteners. A little glue, a little cap, some finishing nails, and some wood filler, and we are good to go. Take away all that ugly. Just like that. What better dowel to fill those holes with than the dowels that were in there to begin with? Thanks for your help, RIKON. Let's go plug some holes. For the sake of memory, I wanted to try and use as many pieces off that table as I could. All these things I'm pointing to here are ugly. We're going to cut them off and get rid of them. I need some way to hold that top on, so what better way to hold the top on than the thing that was holding the top on to begin with. I'm going to cut the angle here so that matches on that side. Where my hand rests, I'm going to cut the thing in half, flip it over, and put the other end on the other side. I didn't want to run the risk of splitting that piece of wood with nails. I didn't want the screw heads visible, so we're using clamps and glue. That'll be plenty strong enough.
So this is just one way that I can incorporate little components of the table, retain those for memory, for however you want to say it, but I think it's kind of cool. It adds a little something to the table. This will go across, and this will be actually how I'm going to attach the top. I'll drill holes through the bottom, and it'll pull the top of the table down onto here. This will get painted white along with the frame, but it's one way to keep Grandpa and Dad's woodworking in my spirits and in my sight. So I'm going to make a set of stanchions for the second shelf, 3 of them to be precise, and that's what these little sticks were that I was cutting earlier. Now what I've done here is set up a stop block, and I've decided that I'm going to do a half lap on these for strength. So I'm going to cut half of this away and then half lap them in. Got the stop block so I don't go in too far. I've got the center of the blade already lined up. We'll drive them all into that far, then we'll reset and we'll turn them around and run them in this way and cut the lap off. So on this one here, before I cut it out, I want to point out, I'm going to do my very best to get rid of that knot by cutting it out and making a playing card with it. Okay, so the cross break needs a half lap joint as well. And what I've got here is my old table saw sled. I figured out the angle that I need for the fence by placing this ruler against the blade, matching it up with the line that I drew. And then I went ahead and put in a stop block here where I can start at the edge of this line and work my way across. It'll hit the other stop block here, creating the perfect lap joint. Do, do, do.
Finding center so I know how to line up the stanchion. It doesn't look like the lines are showing up very well in the camera, but I've marked where I can put the glue on these legs so it corresponds with the stanchion when I put them up. And I've got a center line on the stanchion right there that lines up with the center line on the cross legs. Like this is how I marked it. Now we'll put the glue on, smear it up, throw some nails in them, and they will be there permanently. And now it's time to put a shelf in place. We'll make this shelf out of standard 2x6s. I've got this one cut to width. Let's see if it fits. Sure does. Look how happy. And I lucked out on the last one. It was a straight 2 inches wide. Beautiful fit. Happy again.
So we couldn't decide if we wanted to have the center stanchion in or not. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do, is I'm going to put these little tracks in here. I hope you can see that in the camera. And that way, if she decides she wants the center stanchion in, she can simply slide it in place and it'll be sitting in there for support. Easy peasy.
So I located center on the bottom side of the shelf. Then I took the stanchion and set it in the middle and drew a line on each side of the stanchion to give me my space. I then added a 1/16 of an inch beyond that space so that if there was any swelling in the stanchion, it would still slide in and out. We put a little glue on here. We used some short finishing nails. I've got a center line to line up center with the guide. We'll pop some nails in at that point, and it should be good to go. So I know it's a painting project, but I'm still going to cover those little bitty finishing nail holes. Call it being fussy, call it what you will, it'll look better when it's finished. And we're down to the painting part of the project. You can see where the two supervisors are. Serious help right here. Mr. Capers, Mr. Atlas, and my finishing department, my beautiful wife, Lisa, putting the pretty on this table. Okay folks, there you are, a finished product, all painted up and prettied up and ready to be displayed. I love my dad, my mom, Lisa's mom and dad. I hope I did them all proud. We took an old coffee table that's been in the family for years and modernized it with some farmhouse accents. I used every piece of that table except for the spindles. I'm pretty proud of that. I love my dad. I think he'd be happy. Thanks for watching. Give me a like, a share, a comment. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.